what can you do when you're a kind of, and the funny thing is that I had braces when in my 20s. I had braces, they were all together perfect. But I knew that because of the way that everything was kind of constructed here, I needed something to kind of keep them in place. And people were like, no, it's okay. Once your teeth are set, they're fine. And no, saying, no, they don't do that, not with this mouth. So couldn't convince them otherwise. Who was I? I was a kid in their 20s who didn't know anything, right? The dentist knew everything. That kind of deal. So anyway, how are you?
Busy but good. Running like multi-day workshops for my team. So that's always.
So you're running workshops now?
Yeah. Well, for my team. Trying to set up the whole foundation stuff for them. And so a lot of thinking, planning, engaging.
Right. So is it like about 6, 7, 8 people? I mean, how big is your team?
It's not that big at the moment. That's why it's a good time to run that kind of workshops. We have around how many? 5? Yeah, 5 of us.
Yeah, but this is something you wanted to do. I remember when we talked about like what's the next step for you. It's like I want to start writing these on your own. So start doing my work.
I do. I love doing those. It's just a little bit tough because I'm part of the team. So I'm like handling facilitation and participating at the same time. That's always challenging for me. Like I never really know, like as a facilitator, you want to be as neutral as possible, right? Like you don't want to influence any opinion and all that. But then when you are part of the team, and I'm not just talking about like a team that just work for making the decision, then you go apart, right? I'm talking about like I'm the team lead for the whole group and I'm facilitating the whole thing. And then that is quite challenging, I thought. Like, and every time I try to wait for them to have their input before I would speak, but then they were also waiting for my input in a sense.
So you couldn't just be a facilitator. You had to be somebody who was actually, participating as well.
Yeah, and they do want me to be there to facilitate, to participate because like a lot of the decisions that we make and a lot of the experience that I have, like they feel that it's important to have that there. Like I don't know, I'm like wearing multiple roles in the workshop. It's tougher than like if it's just facilitation. I thought.
That and it can be tricky if people know you, because that was what my situation was. But I was also in a position of power over the people that I was at, so I had to be very sensitive to getting their opinions and not showing favoritism. So it's always that delicate balance of trying to get through the work without going, well, this is how I think it is. And as soon as I gave my opinion on anything, everyone was like, this is the way we do it. And I'm like, no, it's just an opinion. But
yeah, exactly. It's very, very similar to like the situation I'm at, like maybe not to that extreme, but like it's exactly how I feel. Like that's why I try to wait until they speak up first, and then I would say what I feel. But then it still wouldn't really quite work the way that it's like if you're not participating, right?
Yeah. But now that you're a master facilitator, you don't need to worry about that, since you know your way around everything. You're just like, yeah,
still learning
no
a
efforts
lot.
At all.
And it's tiring, right? Like we're doing like 3 hours online workshop, and it's like continuous 3 hours because there's no other way around. We only have that overlapping time.
Can I tell you something that's scaring me a little bit? Because I'm seeing a pattern that I recognize from like an earlier era in my time, way back when. Everyone that I know in this space, design sprints or service design or designers, there's this huge flurry of activity. Like people are working 6 weeks without rest, working weekends. Like there's this mad rush that is happening right now with people trying to get work out the door for their employers. It started, I think, about a month ago, a month and a half ago, right around the turn of where the European countries were at least getting through most of the COVID stuff. And it either feels like it's catch up, or it's trying to get a lot of work done before the end of the year before they have to do another second phase or whatever for some industries. But just, it's amazing how many people just all of a sudden just have, you either don't have anything to do or you've got so much work to do that you don't know what to do with yourself. And I feel like you're in that second category because in the earlier part of the year where things were a little bit more steady and predictable, there was a different vibe that was going on. But lately I've been seeing what's been going on, and you're like, kind of like, yeah, I did a 3,000 hour workshop and I've had this and I've been, it just feels like a lot of people are doing a ton of work in a short period of time.
Yeah, I think because I took on, like, I'm now in a different role in my team. So it's a very different thinking, or wearing different hats right now. So I have to worry much more, I guess.
Are you a lead with your team? I mean, are you basically like?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm leading the team, and it's small right now, but it's actually going to grow. The reason that we are still small is just because we couldn't find the right people. We are still hiring, trying to look for 2 or 3 more people. It's just really hard to find.
Hard to find.
Ironic, eh? Like people are getting laid off, and then we can't find the right people.
There may be a reason why they got laid off. No. Just out of curiosity, is it because they don't have certain skill sets, or when you interview them, there's a disparity between what they say they can do and what they actually can speak to, or is it just the profile doesn't seem to work?
I think it's interestingly, a lot of them, well, not a lot, but a few of them that we decided on, okay, we'll take them on, and then like, it's almost like when it's close to the time that they would actually join the team, then they turn it down. Or like if something like gets like super close to signing the contract, and then they were like, I found someone else, or something other things. And then you kind of have to reset the whole process again every time, right? So then it takes even longer that way. Yeah, but we have a new member joining soon, so I'm quite excited.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah.
So it's slowly working itself out.
Yeah, it's all, everything is taking time. Like, it's slowly falling in place, but it takes time and effort. But I really love my team. Like, my team is really, really, really working as a team. I don't know how to explain it, but it's really working as a team. So.
But it feels right.
Yeah. And that's what I want. Like, I don't want just any person in a team, right? Like, it doesn't help that way. Mm-hmm. So you want the right person that can fit the personality, can fit the atmosphere and the dynamic. And skill actually is almost secondary thing, like, because that can be taught, right? Like, we can mentor them, we can teach them, but personality and the dynamic is very hard to match, I found.
The thing I struggle with the most being a functional manager and hiring people is that I was a really tough hire. I was strict as could be. I only wanted people that I felt that could actually that could thrive in the environment that I was managing, and that it was a mutually beneficial relationship. We just didn't use them for their skills. A lot of people go into it saying, okay, we just want this person to do this function. But I looked at it more as a long-term investment into somebody, no matter what their experience or skill set. And I had that dynamic happening along with people above me and my peers that were that played the loyalist card, where they wanted to hire people that they knew because they were best friends. And that was tricky, because I had some people that were put in front of me that, when I did just a cursory interview with them, they would say, here's this person. I go, okay, well, we'll put them through an interview run. And at first it was fine. And then after 10 minutes, they would go into this like entire thing about their lives. They're raising 4 kids. They don't have a job in 6 months. And it was this weird kind of thing where it didn't turn into, it wasn't a job interview anymore. It became a therapy session. And I'm like thinking, okay, I'll listen to you, dude, but you're already lost the narrative around how we're going to work professionally. And it was just strange. So there was that. Then you had somebody who was buddy with someone else that just did an interview and thought they had the job by default. So their interview, you could tell that they were not quite all there mentally for whatever reason. Yeah. Maybe they just took a siesta that went into the interview and just basically go, yeah, I did this and we had all these things. Tell me what you did with this particular item? It's been so long, but I remember, and I'm like, dude. And I had other people on the call listening in to what was going on, and they were just, I saw the text, they were going like, nope, no, never. but I had to tell the director or the VP, that's like, this guy doesn't look like he's a good fit for us. And I had to be very political about it. So fun times being a hiring manager.
Yeah, I can imagine there must be like a lot of conversation, like really interesting conversations there, right?
It was, but what I tried to do is make it inclusive to the people that were going to eventually work with the person. So I let them in on what was going on in the backgrounds. And then for the people that were the leads, I would actually show them the tools I would use with HR to look at all the candidates that applied, because I wanted, if in the event that I left, which I did, one of them could basically go in and say, I've been exposed to these tools and exposed to this hiring process. And I've been sitting in with HR to understand. And eventually there was one person who did take my job after I left. And he basically told me, it's like, that was beyond just kind of understanding how to manage others, which he had experience with. It was a no-brainer. It was simple. So I let them in as much as I could without me being the final hiring decision, but I took in, like I do with everything I do that you've seen, I take in data and get some perspective on what the decision is, because they have to bear the brunt of a bad hire decision, because I'm guessing to a certain extent. So that's at least the way I did it. And it seemed to work out really well. At least the people that I hired are still there. So I got to take solace in that, I guess.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
So speaking of hiring, let's go into the topic that we promoted this entire thing with, is diversity. And this was a talk that you did for Mural Imagine a little while ago about how diversity can be something that's really, advantageous, something that companies look for, but on the dark side, it could also be the poison mushroom, as you call it. So the way you explained it to me offline, I got it, but why don't you kind of re-explain it again, so that for people that are brand new to this concept of diversity being a red pill or a blue pill, tell us in summary, what your talk was about.
Yeah, so I'm quite interested in working with people with diversity, but also recognize that actually it's not always a good thing. It is actually, like, you can see many different studies saying like how diversity is a must if you want to have the highest performance team, and how it can bring all the different thinking, different culture, different dynamic, and that you can solve problem better and so on. But actually it's not as easy just like hiring people from different background and different expertise and then just put them together. It never really quite worked that way. And if you just do that without really fostering the relationship, it actually can be very poison to the team. It can very quickly bring the team down, like the performance down, because it's just as simple as they don't really understand each other. Not even just different culture, even just like if you just think about different disciplines or different functions, they cannot speak different language. Like, even if it's all English, but they have different words, like the same word can mean different things. So one of the example that I used in the talk was that, like, if I say the word knife, like if you are into hunting, you may think of like an army knife. And if you are into cooking, you may think of like a chef's knife. And if you're into painting, you may think of a painting knife. So even if the same word, depends on your background and culture and everything, your knowledge, you can understand the same thing differently. And when things are different, it will make people feel uncomfortable and they don't understand each other, and then they will blame on each other when things goes wrong. And especially bad when, per se, like if you have a team actually works quite well, and then you suddenly bring in someone who is different, and then something goes wrong, and automatically the whole team will blame on this person because it used to work before, and because now you bring in something different, the thing is broken. That's why I called it, actually, like, it's very necessary. Diversity is necessary if you want to have the best performance team, but if also it can be the worst thing that you can have if you, to bring your team to bad performance. That's essentially the message that I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
So did you give an example of a team that does diversity right? Like, what are the characteristics of the team, and what are some things that are that you identify as being a properly diverse team that was doing it correctly?
Yeah, so the way, or the way that you can see if the teams are working, for me, actually, is, I think the easiest way is to see it during lunchtime. Like if you see a group of people who are sitting together having lunch, and they are all from different disciplines or different background, different ages, means that you really have a diverse culture in your company. I think a lot of this stuff I speak from my experience and also my background, because when I first moved to Canada, I used to live in a small town, and people there didn't really speak English, and people there didn't speak my language, and I didn't speak English. So it was like super hard for me to actually know what was going on. And like, it's just because I couldn't understand what they were trying to do, and then already made me feel very uncomfortable in a way. And the result of that was that the first few years I was in Canada, I was actually very, very sad. I think like I almost cried every day for a few months or something. And in the end, I actually rejected the culture, rejected the language because of that. And like, I think that's also why my English still doesn't sound perfect. Like, think about like how young I was, I landed in Canada, but then because I purposely rejected to learn the language, so then I kind of lost the age that I like, the best age to learn language kind of thing, right? So yeah, so that was actually quite bad. I think the way that if you just put someone different in a group, and then I think it will just be really it's not a nice feeling for both sides. And the same thing also you can see in companies when like they don't really foster it. Like, people will start blaming on each other, and they would not trust each other. They actually, like, distrust will also create. And one thing is that, like, if you like, trust, like, is context dependent. So if you trust someone, you may trust someone on something, but then you may not trust someone on something else. But when you distrust someone, you will automatically distrust everything that this person has. So that is quite crucial to actually build that trust. And the funniest thing is to make diversity work, actually you need to allow people to find similarities first, because it's just human nature that we try to find similarities in people, or to feel comfortable in that environment. So yeah, and the way that I put it out there was like, you need to it's a culture building thing. You need to make it a learning culture and try to foster it, because when people are curious about the differences in between people, then they will start to know and find similarities between them. And then once they find that similarity, then they will begin to trust that person. And then afterwards, then the difference will become just a learning experience for them.
Okay. I've recognized some of the things that you're talking about. To me, diversity is something where I translate it as where people are able to hear and understand other people, regardless of whether or not they agree or disagree with them. If there's an atmosphere of understanding where there isn't a jump to judgment or kind of going in one direction or another, that's probably a good environment to be in, because then it's less about figuring out that filter of whether or not somebody is going to prejudge you about what you're saying, versus something where if it's an open table and you're talking about a topic of some type that's professionally related, you get the sense that you're actually accommodating and welcoming different points of view, whether or not they're part of the agreement or they're not. And that's really hard to do sometimes for people that are very aligned with power structures and do not want to go against the grain for the perception of that would adversely affect them on reviews or other things. So I think sometimes diversity is kind of interpreted as race, or it's interpreted as like gender based, which is there from a business perspective. But I think diversity is one of those things where it's the accepted inclusion of other points of view. Yeah. And if that is nurtured, and that is like more, is that's the underlying thread of everything without it being like explicit, then that probably is a pretty good environment to work within.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When we talk about diversity, it's not really just it's not the gender or the race thing. It's actually the different perspective from people and even different experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so when they are able to share that, and you know, like sometimes when people tell you a story, you would say, "Oh, you're just weird," like that kind of thing. Like that's how human normally would like to react, right? Because this person tell you something that you're not used to, then you think is strange or like it's weird. But then actually when you can appreciate the difference, it will become something even more interesting.
People tell me I'm weird or strange. I wear it like a badge. Now I do. I mean, I was told that ever since I was a kid. So after a while, it's like, okay, it would be inwards, like, okay, let's evaluate and see what's wrong or see if there's something issue. But then as I got older, I'm like, F it. I'm just going to be the way I am because I don't know of any, I'm going to grow and change, obviously, but really I'm not there to appease other people. The more you get into the habit of trying to align with somebody else's opinion of who you are, you're in trouble. Because then you've lost the narrative about who you think you are. And you never want to try to do that.
And it's your life, right? It's not someone else's. So why bother?
Some people, it takes a long time for them to learn that. And that includes me. For a long time, I thought it was like all about making sure that everyone else felt comfortable around me. And then I was like, nope. I learned that really fast when I got into radio, in college, and that changed quick. So you're around other people that are on this opposite side of the spectrum where they think it's all about you. And that play between like that extreme and then you being like, okay, I'm all about like kind of making sure that my environment's okay. It's got to be centered on who you are. But yeah. So in terms of diversity, that's kind of the same thing that you're kind of infusing, is that we value points of view that may not be, that may be counter to it, because it's something where through that conflict or through that difference of opinion, then you get a better understanding of what each other is supposed to be talking about. Sometimes that's difficult too. A lot of people want that kind of, let's all make sure that we're all together and we're all unified and everything else. And I'm always the guy that's in the car going, I don't get this at all. And that happened one time when I was a director for an agency, and it was like, oh, come on, we just discussed this. We were just about to launch. They want no conflict. Everyone wants to be like gung ho. And I'm like, it doesn't make any sense and I point out the facts, in my opinion. And it was tough to do, but I just naturally can't. It's just my nature. I have to speak up when there's something that doesn't seem right. And if they're right and everything goes well, then they've got something to basically like rib me on at lunch. Or if not, then
see, like if you were able to speak up to like those situations, that means that you already had a safe environment, at least a feeling of safe environments, that you would feel comfortable to talk up, like to speak up like that, right? But
no, it was confident. It wasn't necessarily the environment that was safe. It was confidence in what I felt, so that I could forgive myself if I was wrong. My environment back then in that kind of agency was very cutthroat, and I recognized it as such. So I avoid certain people, but I aligned with others that were more, generous with their time and their point of view. But no, that environment in and of itself was something where there was stress, tension. There was, get as much done as fast as possible for the client to make sure that they were happy. That was the environment. But what I would do is I would lay a critical mind to saying, okay, if this is the outcome our client wants, what are we doing that actually maps to that? How can we rationally say that this is something that we can hang our hat on and say, this is something that moves the bill for them? And there's a strategy like point of view for that. And then there's the people that are actually doing the work that have a point of view of that. Both have merit, but the better businesses, to your point about diversity, consider both equations and not just the incentive at the top of what goes on. In larger organizations, sometimes there's no way around it. The people that are doing sales and have the most face time with the client are going to push the envelope and know what they can do based on their thing. Their interest is selling. Whereas people who are doing the work in the product development lifecycle have a completely different view. They want it right. They want it, to work right out the gate. They don't want any mistakes. They don't want to have to redo anything. Just different values or different things they're focusing on. So.
And how would you bridge that gap?
You don't. A lot of people try, but you don't. It's easier if you're in a smaller company, smaller to mid-size, then it's much easier for you to do. Larger enterprise companies, no. No, it's too, it's especially multinationals. It just doesn't, the only way that change is really influenced or things that are heard is basically when they're communicated from the top. And when they do, they're usually muted because they're going through like a lot of like filters around, let's not offend anybody. Let's make it with just the facts. This happened this quarter, this bill, this everything else. The smarter companies tend to kind of blend it a bit. Like they have something that's design sprint like, where they put a representative from like program management, development, design, analytics, marketing, and they form like a unit team that can be assembled and broken apart for different clients. But there's one person that talks to the client, is the liaison between them and the development team and the rest of the team that doesn't need to have exposure to a lot of the stuff. And the message, which can be controlled through that dynamic between that liaison. So that there's more of a dissemination around the information and the stuff that people need to know that they would reflect on. If they're hit with a lot of metrics, business metrics, some people are just eyes are going to glaze over. There's going to be like, this doesn't interest me at all. Right. So, yeah. So it really depends on the makeup of the business, but more often than not, there's companies like Intuit that have infused design into their culture. So there's a lot of back and forth around what makes sense for the client in terms of like the approach and how people, the usability of what they do. So there's that. I mean, there's some cultural aspects of things where the diversity of opinion, the diversity of people is kind of a default. It's just kind of assumed, or not assumed, but it's actually promoted as part of what makes people special. So it's less about being declared like you should do this and acquiesce to this behavior. It's more, this is just the makeup of who we are, which I think makes a hell of a difference when it comes to bringing people on board.
Yeah. Like, yeah, just thinking, because I also like, actually part of my job is I'm trying to see different ways that we can fill in the gaps between the different functions. So then they can, like, because today's products, they are not really a product only thing anymore. It's more almost turning into a service, right? So actually there's not very clear distinctions between a product or a service in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the different functions, all the diverse expertise, now they have to work really, really close together in order for something that really work well in terms of like the customer journey. Otherwise, there will be a lot of mislinks in between. Like example could be like if the marketing never talked to the products, then you may have a website that has something totally different than what your product looks like. And
yeah.
Part of the job is like, how can we bridge the gap, or how can we fill in the gap so that they can somewhat talk the same language and be able to share information openly. Yes. So yeah, we have to like think of different ways how we can bridge that. And one of them, like the reason that I say is part of my job is because we use design system to do that. So
one of the greatest struggles I see design teams going through is what is an interpretation of what the business wants, especially if it's just handed down through requirements and conversations. There's an understanding of the program manager or the project manager side of the house that says, okay, this is my interpretation or understanding of what the company wants. Then if you go to the strategy level or you go to the VP level, they have these high level kind of like things they want to hit or things they want to do, but the how is inconsequential. They don't want to know about the details. They just want to make sure that whatever is produced by the team, that it basically meets those levels. And it just gets more kind of atmospheric as you get on different levels of leadership. So it's always where you're at the mercy of things changing in the business, where you may have to shift your work because now there's a different emphasis because all of a sudden they found new data, or there's a shift in the market where you have to go in a particularly different direction. Like everyone went for remote all of a sudden, but that's different from doing the actual work. I'm thinking of like, if all of a sudden you had to support a certain platform or you have to actually put less emphasis on one feature and put more emphasis on another because the client now needs this more than anything. So there's got to be a switch in focus. And sometimes that can happen immediately. So I always see
in the product world.
Yeah. So it always seems like there's this real struggle with, having this one view where everyone's on the same page about what they're doing. At least that's the understanding. And then either through dynamic change that's out of your control, or misinterpretation of what's being asked, or even an execution play between design and development, how that's actually what the end result is. I don't have an answer for it, but I just feel like it's one of those great struggles that design teams have. There's the spoken or understood initiative about what you're supposed to do, but then there's the implied one that's supposed to go with the work that may not get translated, and you're also at the mercy of change when it happens.
But isn't that the responsibility from the top to actually communicate what they want clearly? I mean, the house, it is up to the team to how they want to do things, right?
I think they have the best of intentions when it comes to communicating those things, but sometimes it's one of those things where it gets lost in translation. And some people do it very well, where they have people that have direct access to the customer will talk to the design teams directly. Say, here are the conversations I've had that I can let you know about. And usually marketing agencies are like that. They'll have, or the ones that still exist. You have one person that is the only liaison to the client, and then the rest of the team basically interprets to that one individual. Though that's changed recently, where if you're in smaller groups, smaller teams, or smaller businesses, everyone's on the same page about what it is. There's less filter for that communication to go through. On the enterprise environment, good luck, because then you're relying on process, like a document or a conversation to dictate everything that happens, because there's just too many people involved.
But why can't it be more direct though?
It could be. Sometimes it is. You get skunk work projects because of that. If there's somebody who's like a unicorn, or someone that is so talented and skilled and is accommodating, which is that's a different conversation altogether, because sometimes people can be manipulated if they're seen as wonderkins. Sometimes they're pulled to the side saying, hey, I need this in 3 weeks. I can pull you. We can get somebody else on the project, but can you help me with this? Where they find that their abilities are a shortcut to getting them where they need to go. So the direct line to what's being asked is now shorter. So you get direct feedback from that. But the problem is you're so close to the sun, those changes are going to be coming all the time. And that access is going to be implied, where they're going to be hitting you up at 10 p.m., 2 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And that's just the nature, because they don't care about the how, they care about the immediate need that's in front of them, and how that could be intrinsically motivating for them on the sales side, or maybe something that they desperately need to basically make numbers. But you start getting into the mercy of that dynamic. And usually design wants that filter between the person at the very top and what they're actually being asked to do.
I haven't experienced that actually for myself.
I hope you never do.
But I do work in a different.
There are some people that thrive on it, though, that they feel like that they're close to the sun, then their job security is more secure. So they can handle the stress, or they're built for it. Others, when they finally get a taste of how frenetic and chaotic it can be, especially if somebody doesn't have their crap together, it can sour them to even the possibility of being in the system in the first place, because now they understand what's on the other side of the curtain that they haven't seen. Now that they do see it, they're like, this is what I'm kind of working for. This is what I'm kind of aligning for. And maybe it's a healthy conversation for yourself if you want to kind of consider your options, but yeah, there's that. I think the greatest thing that you can do while you're in a company is do informational interviews with other people and walk a mile in their shoes. When you're in an enterprise environment, or when you're a large company, it doesn't take that long, especially your first 6 months of the company, that you're not saturated with work and responsibility. You can go around and say, I'm the new person here. I would love to understand what you do. Because then people recognize it
with all the onboarding stuff.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't even, onboarding is a crapshoot. Sometimes they go, you're going to attend this 2-hour introduction thing or a half day, and we're going to show you 4 presentations, and you're going to take home a book or a PDF or something that explains everything. We're going to set up your desk and we'll tell you when your computer is ready. You can come there and you can wander around aimlessly for 3 weeks trying to figure out what to do. They'll give you some redlining or some like piddly crap to do until finally you're on a project to have to work with like somebody that you're going to be like, that's going to mentor you, and then you're fine. But if you can proactively say, okay, I am going to figure out, I'm going to start reaching out and I'm going to understand the underlying culture of the company and say, look, it's clear with your boss, say, I'm going to basically like talk to a number of people, just want to see what it's all about. But when you start getting those interviews, you understand how the work actually is done and who's responsible for it. Like I found out one company, there was one guy that did all the tests, one that wrote all the software testing. He used software. He worked 16-hour days. He had 8 projects. And it was this one guy in his 50s. He worked constantly, kept to himself, didn't talk to anyone, would update Youre or whatever whenever his work was done. But that was it. That was all he did. His name was Bird. They didn't know how to say his real name in Japanese, so they just called him Bird. And that's all he did. And he was happy as a clam. He ate his lunch in the cafeteria. Nobody talked to him. Like almost Unabomber-esque, like basically didn't wear the hood, but he was basically kept to himself. But yeah, that was it. So it's like that. That's something that if you don't recognize that where you are right now is temporary, you are not going to work at your company for 20, 30 years. That reality is no longer in play. It is just, it's archaic to think that way, because that used to be the way in maybe the 60s and 70s where you had pensions, you had reasons to stay with the company, and they were going to be loyal to you. Not anymore. You got to look at this as in terms of long-term. Take advantage of what resources you have now, network like crazy, just understand how people work and how they go about the things, and get that diversity of opinion and perspective. That'll help you so much when you basically like move professionally to that next learning curve. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, that is actually very interesting, because after I moved to Germany, I realized that people here, they work for very long for a company. Like a lot of my coworkers, they're like over 10 years experience in the same company. And like the previous job that I had, not the previous, the one before, was like the people working there for like 20, 30 years on the same job, and they don't even plan to change. They don't want to change.
Yeah.
And the company doesn't plan to get them away. But the same thing, I don't see that as often when I was in Canada. Like we have that rule, kind of like unspoken rule, right? Like 3-4 years, if you keep moving to different companies, your career can grow faster, better that way. I don't know if you heard of it, but yeah.
I think people stay. I think people would stay in so people would stay in their positions longer if they feel like that's their like that's how their makeup. Like the job isn't too demanding. The work is regular. They're considered essential by the company. They're not crazy. They don't cause fights. They don't throw things. They get along with other people, and they just know their role. They provide their function. And as long as their function is good and they do the work and they're dependable and they just do the work as expected, what's the incentive of either changing that or somebody that's working with them likes regularity? Why would they change them as well? So kind of works hand in hand to your point.
So I'm not there yet, but I'm always curious, like, can you really keep learning and growing if you stay in the same position, same job for, I don't know, 20 years or something?
You would probably learn based on how the company changes and how your tools change. That would be and what you're exposed to. Also, you may be somebody that wants to speak at conferences or write articles. It just depends on your mettle. Like how much do you want to kind of?
No, but you don't need 20 experience to do that nowadays.
You'd be surprised at how many people want people to speak at conferences for free these days.
Oh yeah, of course, a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are willing to.
Yeah, because they want the experience too. Like you get to be where I'm at. You've spoken, headlined, done the whole gamut, know what it's like. But at least you have the experience. For people that have never done it before, it's like, oh well, I've done the online, but when you're in front of a group of like 300 people and you're presenting on something, the pressure is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But what you realize is when you're up on the stage and you're talking to people, half of them are tuned out already. They're already thinking about something else. Their phones, their lives, their kids, like their weight, their face, what they dress. They're already distracted. You're basically a diversion for like 5-8 minutes, and then they're going to look at a phone. Or you have the 25% that are going to listen to you because they're looking for something that you're going to say that's interesting. And then when they do that, they'll take the snapshot and put it up on Twitter, or they'll do something else. And it's like intrinsically motivating for them to promote themselves and what they do. And then you have the 5% that are really interested in what you do. And they will either leave you feedback, or they will come up to you later on and introduce themselves and ask a question or make a proposal or something. But you never ever know what that's about. And usually those percentages change based on your notoriety, your reputation, how in demand you are. And there's a lot of different factors, but yeah, it's interesting to go through that. But there you go.
Yeah. Also depends on how you present it as well. There are different skills that you can keep people engaged the whole time.
Yeah. Where do you see it? So what conference are you going to speak at in a couple of years? What's going to be the headline conference when we finally get rid of COVID, or we're all permanently wearing masks? What city are you going to be speaking in, and what are you going to be speaking about?
What city? Oh, interesting. Never thought about that. I don't know. I kept thinking going back to India, so maybe that. Yeah.
That would be interesting.
That's not a city, that's a country. But
I think that entire country is going to need some real help after this COVID thing is done, because their numbers are going through the roof right now, if you haven't looked lately.
I haven't looked. I told you. That's why when you told me the news yesterday, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I purposely create myself a habit not to look for news. I figure that if something is important, it will come to me through you, through friends. No, I don't know.
Okay, so let's go through like all of the stuff that's happened recently. So this is gonna be like a remotely interesting part where I can just tell you like what's been going at the speed since you've been kind of doing your thing. So the Attorney General of New York has subpoenaed the records of Donald Trump from Deutsche Bank because they're building a major tax fraud case against him. There was also an announcement that they are going to be investigating the National Rifle Association. It may or may not be associated with the tax records, because what it seems to be, at least the rumors in the bushes, is that the NRA has been a front for money laundering. And for they basically, Russia used it as like an organization to move like different people back and forth and to basically like infiltrate like espionage or whatever. So there's this whole thread that's going on with that. You know all about Beirut and that terrible tragedy that happened. The aerial shots that have been coming out between the before and after would just characterize the explosion and what was going on. I can't tell you about pop culture. We need to bring somebody else here that knows pop culture. Like what the fake Sandy Lam, the singer, is actually doing, if she's retired yet, and if you can actually take over the spot of like Google, what's going on with that.
Hey, I'm not doing too bad. When I try to Google my name now, I'm still on the first page. So I'm
you will break the internet if you ever meet her in person and the both of you take a selfie and you go, look, I met Sandy Lam. That's when the internet will break, and it'll be like when Johnny Say had that fur robe and the sunglasses. When he did that, he didn't need to do anything else. He could have just basically had that as his persona. Like, when did you see that promo he did?
I think I did. I think I know which one you're talking about.
He should just do that, put it up on a podcast, and just do it like a late night talk show. It's going, hello, everyone. We're going to talk about innovation. All here on Johnny Say. Awesome, and then just do like 80s, like jazz, real soft jazz, stuff like that. Oh my God, he'd kill. He would kill. But I know it's not him. He's more of a dynamic person. So what else has been going on in the world beyond tragedy, destruction, and everything else?
You see, like that's kind of the reason that I don't want to watch the news or find out the news by myself, because I feel like often, what can I do about it? There's nothing much I can do about it. Things just happened. And
Well, I do have a recommendation for you. If
yeah.
you're a fan of Reddit, or if you've ever been there before, you can actually change it so that you do nothing but a stream of like wholesome things. So it'd be like happy news, wholesome memes, like the inspirational stories. You can basically graph the whole thing and make it nothing but a positivity chamber. And you can do that on Reddit so that you don't have to have any news, world news. Damn, that's interesting. Idiots in cars and all the things that I
Oh
subscribe
yeah, you
to.
told me that one.
I mean, yeah. So if you're not familiar with Reddit, go to like the sub channel "Idiots in Cars," and you just have and then I'm gonna actually like make it so that you never ever have any like public transportation in the U.S. or in Australia, because there are so many nitwits there where there's this guy going into a traffic circle and this car goes over the top of him, like basically sees it in his
Over?
vision, just leaps over and goes over. It's
Wow,
just
okay.
yeah, there's so much stuff. But the Damn That's Interesting is pretty cool too. That goes into like wildlife and like different types
What
of
was that one?
Damn That's Interesting.
Okay.
All one word. Damn That's Interesting.
Okay.
Uh, if you ever, then the other one that I frequented that I haven't paid attention to is Roast Me, where people actually put up a picture of themselves, describe who they are, and then put a picture of themselves and or a little thing that says roast me. So it's like a selfie kind of confirmation. And they have these professional roasters that basically just insult them to no end about everything that they,
What?
their appearance and everything else. And it's just brutal. Some of them are just like, the people that sort of engage in them, they stop talking altogether. It's bad.
So they volunteer themselves.
They volunteer themselves. They basically go like, okay, they hold up a little shot and they go, roast me like this. And then you give a bio to explain who they are. But the idea is that they're roasting, but they're not doing it to basically make themselves feel worse, like if they're depressed. So you have to make sure that you're not in a certain mental state when you do it, so that you're not making somebody feel worse about themselves.
What is the purpose of that then?
Just to basically get attention for some people, but for others to just basically go like, I could drive a tractor through the space in your eyebrows is one of the things somebody may say, like just pure insults, and they can run the gamut. So it's just, if ever you want to just see like some people insult others, it's just like, wow, just bad. Also, Ask Reddit is pretty interesting, but those run the gamut of different things. But I would say if you're looking for just positivity, you can craft Reddit the way you want and just make it nothing but channels that are nothing but like joy and sunshine. That's it. It's like pretty pictures, cute photos of puppies. Yeah, seriously, you can basically diverse it that much.
Yeah, but I think I'm not like particularly looking for anything positive or negative. I think I'm just like wanting to be neutral. I don't know. I just feel like, why should I spend the time? Well, I know there's entertainment there, but like there's not much for me to actually try to look at something or read about something that I can't do anything about.
Right. So I'll act as your proxy. And then every week when we meet on Thursday live, I'll tell you what you need to know, and the rest of it is garbage. There you go. So
sure. That's pretty much how I get to know the news. Like it's either through friends or someone talks about it and someone asks me if you knew this or you saw that happen, and I know what happened, and then that's how I know about the news. Yeah. And anything that they don't talk about means it's not that important, so
yeah. It must not be, but then again, it's just what you have time for. If you're working you're working your butt to the bone and you have hardly any time to do anything at all because you're just so saturated with responsibility or other things, like a Jack Russell Terrier, leading a team, the boyfriend over in South Africa with the elephant farm or whatever, you've got all your priorities, right? You got like all these different things that are vying for your attention. So the last thing you want to read about is about Trump's records being subpoenaed by, it doesn't matter to me. I'll just ask somebody I know, like, what's going on? Well, there's an explosion.
Occasionally, like TikTok will show me some funny news. Nowadays, like I think TikTok has changed a bit. Yeah, like I don't know, maybe it's just the way that the algorithm changed. But for me, like they start showing me some news, and like more people talking instead of like people just dancing or like funny acting. Before, when I first joined, it was like all people just like dancing around and stuff like that.
Oh, you joining what? I missed that part.
So when I first joined TikTok, like there was like only
Oh.
videos of people dancing or making like crazy videos and stuff like that. But now I'm seeing more and more. I don't know if the content has changed or is the algorithm has changed, that they kind of learn my behavior and show me the stuff that I like more. So now they're showing me more things like, I don't know, people actually talking, teaching something, or explaining something instead of just like someone dancing around.
It's the latter. So it depends on who you follow, and they'll figure out the content that's with those people in the hashtags, and then they'll try
I followed you, so
Yeah.
that's why.
So now you're seeing a bunch of like old guys running around at night or something, like, or people like, so that could be it. Because you have my running videos where it's like, okay, day 71, I'm still alive. Here's all the stuff, the little tidbits.
How long are you planning to do that?
So my son said till 100. So I'm going to value that. Then I've been debating on whether or not to do like pull-ups and push-ups and actually do like an upper body workout as well. Not that I'm going to put the phone down so you actually see me do the push-up, because that would be A, embarrassing, B, not entertaining, and C, very gross. Because you never want to see somebody struggle with like half death in trying to do that. But I think if I'm going to like kind of involve like fitness, I'm going to at least do that, because I did a lot of the training like in my 20s. It's just a matter of revisiting that and doing it again. But it is still 100. And then it's going to be, okay, Alden, I've done till 100. Now what? And he's going to say, go to 500. And I'll be like, oh my God, really? My cartilage in my knees is going to be completely like destroyed if I do that. But so far, so good. Yeah.
And what
For those
is
people who
he
don't know
doing?
what I'm talking, huh?
What is he doing?
Right now?
Yeah.
Actually,
Like-
hang on. Stay here.
Yeah.
He's overdue. I got to get him out. So we'll see. I'll bring him over. Okay, guys, you're way over. Shut it down. Sandy wants to say hi to you, okay? Save your game. And come, Sandy wants to come say hi to you.
All toad houses and lucky houses will open again. So that means it's
Okay, guys, shut it down. Right now, because mom will come up here. She's going to holler at me. All in. Shut it down.
Wait, Sandy's my mom?
You can come see Sandy. She's on the call.
Oh, Sandy, man.
Yeah, come. You can come say hi to her. Now shut it down.
Mario 3D World was so fun.
Oh, I bet it was.
Oh, yeah.
So, Shrihan, come. So I want to introduce you to Sandy Lam. She's over in Germany right now. And the two of us are having a conversation about all sorts of different things.
Hello.
So
Hi.
she's a what would you say, a systems designer? Oh, watch out for that. Don't touch that.
Design system
And-
lead.
Yeah. So do you want to say anything to her, bud?
I'm gonna punch my dad a lot, all right?
Yeah. So that's usually the case.
How many?
But if you do that too hard, bud, you know what happens. You got to do lessons. So if Alden plays too rough or he doesn't do things he's supposed to do, we've got a system that he actually does lessons in Khan Academy. And right now, what grade are you in math?
5th grade.
5th grade math. So that means he's been acting up quite a bit. You can tell. Okay, guys, I got to talk to Sandy. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Now they just went back.
Yeah. So
I
now
thought they
the
were
noise
supposed to
just-
stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're lucky, someday you'll be fitness to all of this and be like, you'll be using both of your languages to try to tell them to do different things, or the diversity of your different things. You'll just be going like, not that
And then
she'll talk like
eventually
that.
They
I'm
have
just
their
saying,
own language, right?
yes, but not. I mean, that's way in the future. So I didn't have kids till I was 42. I waited a long time for me. I saw too many of my friends back in Michigan getting kids in their 20s, and then having this delayed kind of like exploration of life until their kids went to college and they're traveling the world in their 40s and 50s. I figured I might as well do it young and do that way in advance. And then when was my mid 30s was probably a good time to figure it out if I wanted to have kids at that point. So for me, it was different.
I don't really want, but let's see.
Well, wait, yeah, we're not going to talk about it. You're more right now. Your focus is on anything that's related to babies. It could be a Jack Russell Terrier or an elephant. I mean, we're talking. They were animals. I mean, in terms of like the focus, not necessarily like
Well,
8-year-olds
we are
running
also
around.
animals.
Yes, you're keeping it simple, which is fine.
Yeah, try to.
So, what's going to be coming up next week for you?
Next week, continue doing my so I talked about the multiple day workshops that I'm running, and that is actually going to last 2 weeks every day. So we'll be busy with that.
I was going to ask you, what role do you want in the GBDS if we do this in October? Because you've done this so many times. It feels like if either you would sit out this one, or you would have to have a specialized role so that you're actually like you're coaching, like you're actually showing people what to do. I mean, what if you were to project out into 5, the last one I'm going to be doing, like, what do you want to do with this?
Aren't you going to change the structure on that one, or
I am.
are you doing on number 6?
Well, 6 is going to be different in the sense that it's not going to be probably called GBDS anymore. It probably will be rebranded to something else, because I'm planning on diversifying it a bit. So it's not going to be just about design sprints. I'm finding that there's there's the dash. I'm actually going to be doing LDJs. I'm going to be doing I'm going to be teaching people about problem framing. So one of the influences really fast, because I know we're at time, is I see that there's a thread of people wanting to practice things. And people are always at the end. This one group says, well, can anybody get together over the weekend and practice? And I think, well, why not have it as part of the event where you have two weeks where it's full blown stuff, but then you can pick and choose smaller events that are only 2 hours, 3 hours, but teach you certain things about the process and what people can do. And maybe not just me, but other people who want to be the person that does the presentation, leads people in through the exercises. So something that you're very well versed in, but you have your moment to say like, okay, I make a presentation and a walkthrough. And this is a way for me being able to show other people what I can do that are new to this. So you have people that that have been through the GBDS multiple times, but have a particular way of doing something, like Andy Davis with his icebreakers that really made an impression on all of us. If he had an outlet to basically showcase how you do icebreakers, he already knows how to present, but it can be something like with Mural Imagine, kind of where people can basically showcase what they do and what they love and what they're really good at, and give them that outlet to do so that it's functional at the same time it's informational. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that.
So I mean, I'm not asking you what you want to do in October, but I think for a lot of people that are very senior to this, it would be disingenuous for me to say like, why don't you just be another facilitator? And people would be like, no, I've done that already. I've wore that hat. So if there's a different offering in itself, and say, look, if you had a platform and you had a certain amount of time that you wanted to do sometime in October that says, I'm interested in this, and I want to take advantage of the audience that's going to be here and walk them through something that I know well I want to explore. That can be something.
I don't know. I quite enjoy like the role of teaching in a way. I just don't know if anyone likes to be taught by me.
You would be surprised.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. You can read about going to the Grand Canyon. You can read all the books that you want. You can see all the videos you want. But it's quite different from somebody who's actually been through the Grand Canyon, has been walking through it for 5, 6, 7 years like a park ranger does, and knows where to go and not to go and what to look out for in terms of wildlife, and knows the environment. You're that park ranger. You're not somebody that basically read a bunch of articles on what to do. You know the system. So experience means a lot to people, and people will want to listen to you if you have experience in doing something that you've done in the past, whether it's virtual design sprints or system design or something else. There are people wanting to know and wanting to learn. And it has surprised me how much people wanted to know about the virtual design sprints, because I thought it was just basically a flip of the switch, but it wasn't. So I wouldn't discount your experience at all, Sandy. You've got plenty of things you've done in the past that you can bring to the fore. Say, like, if you really, I'd like to teach you some things that I know about X. And maybe you're halfway there and you're still learning, but at least you're intrinsically motivated to kind of show other people what you can do.
Yeah.
And it lives on as an artifact of like where you are in your career and what you want to learn. And even though I've been kind of, the mastery program has been kind of on ice a little bit, and I'm getting back to it today. That's the idea, is that I'm going to try to build people up so that they can showcase what they know, or have an outlet to basically say, okay, this is what I'm interested in. So that's not just take 3 or 4 weeks to figure something out. It's what can you actually manifest through that if you want to tell other people what you know and what you enjoy.
Yeah. I do quite enjoy teaching. Because every time I try to teach something, I learn much better that way. I mean, it's kind of like a known fact, but it works really well for me.
Yeah, I think that's the play for you for sure.
Mm.
You probably can teach a hell of a lot better than I can. I suck at it. I mean, I haven't been able to get my my ducks in a row in the teaching side of things when I should. And I don't know if it's a lack of motivation or just time, but I've got to figure that out because it's a dimension of what I'm trying to do with this. So anyway, we're over time. I know you got things to do and places to be and probably sleep and food and everything else that you got to get to. So
And my doggy food. That's more
yes.
important.
I'm gonna start
than
hearing
my
you
food
in the
now.
background like, where's my food? Where? So anyway, Sandy, I hope you're well. Thank you for the conversation, and we'll see you next week probably.
Yeah. Next week we're going to talk about Project 101. Project 100.
I was gonna say, you're in the teaching mode again. We're going to go Project 101, and we're going to talk about all these things. No, it's Project 100, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Project 100.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Great. See you next week.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Bye, Sandy. Bye, everybody who's watching in the future. Bye. See you later.